The one thing I've always respected about Barstool is you guys never hid from what you were, right? You always, the expectations were always clear. People, that didn't mean everyone needed to like it. It didn't mean that everybody's always agreed. Far from it.
Right.
There's not everything you guys have said I've always agreed with necessarily, but the part I always respected was you guys were true to what you were. You were very clear about it. You didn't hide from it, but you were never afraid to evolve.
Hit the subscribe button. All right. Let's do it, because is this the first time you've been on my show specifically?
I feel like, wasn't I on your show? I mean, maybe years back.
Way back, maybe. Yeah.
I feel like we have done something, but if not, it's been a while.
And it's certainly, I think it's the first time me and you have ever chopped it up solo. So I'm pumped to have you on. Everybody knows that you're one of the OG, celebrity Barstool fans, if you will. And now it sounds like you're kind of getting into the content game yourself, huh?
Yeah, man. And I'll tell you what you guys do is a lot of work. And I always knew that, but it's not easy, right? Finding a voice that has to be out there consistently to build an audience. And that's what we're trying to do. You know, we launched a show called You Think. We're 2 weeks into it, so we're very early in the process, but it's actually been a blast. And it's really a show that dives into the world of youth sports and the good and the bad and the craziness. And I think when we bring it up to anyone, like anyone with a kid, they immediately nod their head. They're like, I get it.
Yeah.
Like whether your kid's doing 5-year-old, soccer, or your kid's doing 16U travel girls, softball. It's a wild world that our kids are living in. It's a very different world than any of us grew up playing sports in. And that was kind of the inspiration behind doing it. And, we launched an audio platform called Audiorama with Vince Vaughn and Ryan Khalil, a buddy of mine, and two buddies of mine. And this is our first show, and
dope.
It's been a blast so far, and we've had a lot of cool conversations, and just plugging away, man.
I hear that.
Content. You know that world.
Yeah, I mean, when I first had kids, I started the show called Podfathers over here, because I was like, as we were awaiting the baby, I was reading books and websites and all this shit that was like, by a dude for the dude, and like a real take on fatherhood, and then I would read like 3 pages, and I was like, no, this is not. This is more of like the same old like mumbo jumbo from, and maybe there's merit to it, but I was looking for like a real guy, and it was another doctor or another author or somebody speaking in a way that I can't really get down with. So I was like, let's talk about it the way that normal people talk about it.
Right, of course.
And I think something like, as my kids are now getting to this sports age, I don't really know, what to do, because I'm like, you see some of the bad side of it, but the good side of it, and I was thinking about like, I don't have any resources or anything to turn to, and then like literally, this week I see that you're on our schedule doing this podcast, and it was like fell into my lap, because it's something I would definitely tune into to hear about, like, how do you handle competition and winning and losing and working out, all the shit that goes along with it, because there's a lot of stuff to figure out along the way for your kid and for you.
Yeah, and the way I describe it is there's just a lot more decisions, right? When we were kids, you played for your local team, you played in the backyard with your buddies, and then you and your buddies in your hometown played for like the local rec team.
Right.
The 10 kids who were good got selected to play some sort of travel all-star. You played, for the summer, you played baseball, and you just went season to season, and you pretty much played with the same kids you eventually went to school with, and that was it. Like, there was no decisions. You just played like everyone else did. Nowadays, it doesn't matter if it's 5-year-old girls soccer or t-ball or flag football. There's 500 paths.
Right.
And every one of them has good, and every one of them has some bad. And I think, to your point, that was what we hoped this show would be, right? And I grew up in this world. My dad was the high school football coach. We grew up in the world of amateur athletics from the time I was 5 years old. And I'd find myself struggling with it. And I'd look around and be like, well, what's this guy doing? He has zero sports background. Well, how is he going to make the decision if I don't know it?
Right.
I'm like, well, we need to go out and we need to have these conversations, right? Like, so our first episode, we talked with Michael Gervais, who's like a world-renowned sports psychologist, and we got really into it and a lot of the struggles that I've had, and how hard to push your kids because it's the only way I know.
Right.
But then you're like, well, it's not a great parenting technique. So like, and then we've had some really cool conversations with Cooper Manning, whose son is like the #1 high school football player in the world. And he's the Manning, the next generation of Mannings. And you hear them talk about balance. And they never went to any camps and he just plays in the backyard, right? Like there's just so many ways to do it. And we've had so many cool conversations with so many people, both in the parenting and athlete role and psychologists. And as we go, we're going to continue to dive deeper and deeper into it. So hopefully we can be that resource for you, because I'm with you, man. When my kids started out on this, I heard everyone else tell me, oh, it's very different than when we grew up. And I was like, stop. Like, I know sports. Like, I've been around this game. How different could it be? And now I'm like flying to Houston, Texas for 10-year-old youth baseball tournaments. And we're in Florida.
Crazy.
And there's and I'm like, my kid wants to do it. So who am I to tell him not to? But then I also tell my kid, like, if you're going to do it, brother, like, you're going to do it the only way or you ain't playing.
Right.
And then I'm the bad guy and people think I'm crazy.
Sure. I mean, and that's where, I struggle with that, all that kind of sports, school, social life, all of it. Cause I'm always like, I'm kind of just like go with the flow, make sure the kids are happy and safe. But it's like, but if you really want them to succeed at something, you're going to have to push them. And sometimes you got to be the bad guy or a little bit stern about it. And like, I can definitely see where the world of, I think that the phrase participation trophy kind of became this cliche crutch for people in arguments, but I can kind of see where it came from, because it's like, I don't want my kid walking away crying about something or feeling like they were left out, so can we throw them a ribbon or a fucking thing and make them happy? But It's also like, that's because in that moment, I don't want to have a parenting moment where I got to sit them down and explain, sometimes you lose and sometimes you stink and sometimes nobody gives a fuck about you. So it's like, but I can see
Johnny's
where
better than you. That's just the way it is. Dad, I'm 6.
Yeah,
like, I don't know what to tell you.
Right. And what fucks me up a lot is, I think my kids now are 6 and 4, and my boy is the 4-year-old, and so my daughter's in gymnastics and dance and stuff, so she's doing her own thing. But I obviously relate more with my boy when it comes to this, and I'm thinking like, if his father was Earl Woods, by now he'd be, driving the ball 250 yards and, doing a full 18. And I'm like, throwing a fake basketball back and forth with him. You know what I mean? I'm just thinking like, am I doing enough, or is it too little, or should I not even worry about this? All of that shit. 'Cause man, there is just nobody knows, and anybody who can give me any insight, from an athlete to a psychologist to a whatever, I'll listen to all of it. 'Cause
yeah, I don't pretend to have the answers either. There is an element of the environment you grow up into, right? The conversations we're having, and as the story continues to unravel, as you just suggested, like there is an aspect of the environment you grow up in does have advantages. For anyone to think that you're not born with a leg up based on who your parents are and the city you live in, the opportunities, the access to trainers, the access to teams, the school you go to, the neighborhood opportunities, like that's all real.
Right.
The thing, though, that we're finding when we talk to all these successful athletes and the parents of these successful athletes and the psychologists and all the coaches, you can have all the opportunities you want. That's a huge factor. If this is not a kid-led proposition, it doesn't matter who the dad is, who the mom is, how much access to the teams, how good the coaches are. If the kid doesn't really want to do it, and even if the kid's good at it, if the kid doesn't want to do it,
it's not gonna work.
It's never going to work.
Right.
It's going to cause conflict. The parents are going to want it more than the kid. They're going to be pushing the kid into something they're not really into. They're going to be on a team that, yes, they're physically capable of, but they're not really into it. So they're going to burn out.
Right.
And it's just going to cause to parental issues with kids and resentment. Like at the end of the day, the most common thread we've found from all these conversations is set expectations. What is the child's expectations? And then therefore the parents can set their own expectations. And if the kid drives the ship, and whether that's to wreck local town baseball or that you want to chase the most competitive team in the country, whatever that expectation that the kid has and the parents support, if the kid is in the front seat, you're going to be okay.
Isn't it crazy how often you'll see just like asshole parents who are taking it too far, who are being, screaming and yelling on the sidelines or berating their kids? Or it's wild how many, because we see a lot of it at Barstool. You get video submissions of people filming at local Little League and hockey and shit. And it's like, even if you're a crazy competitive parent and a sports fanatic and all that, how do you're in public, you're surrounded by your peers, and you still are like stooping to that? I just don't even understand how that can happen. But It does a lot. I mean, very often.
You get caught up in it. I mean, you get caught up in it. Don't get me wrong. I've jumped my kid's shit plenty.
Yeah.
And most of the
Have
time,
you been a crazy dad on the sideline?
No, I've never like caused a scene.
Right.
Like I've never gotten into like an altercation.
Right. Because that's what I mean. That kind of shit.
I've never gotten into like an out loud. Now, don't get me wrong. Have I yelled at mostly my own kids?
Yeah.
But I'm the coach. I'm not yelling from like the bleachers.
Right.
If I'm not coaching their team, when I'm sitting at my daughter's soccer game, I'm sitting in the chair.
Right.
I'm clapping. I'm saying hustle.
Right.
I'm saying, come on, keep playing. You're doing good. Come on, girls. I'm not, Talbot, get back on defense, score a goal. What are you doing? I'm not.
Right.
But if I'm coaching the team, I'm coaching the entire team, and my kids are going to get coached harder than anyone else's kids. That's kind of part of being the dad and the coach. And don't get me wrong. Have I jumped my kids' shit during a game? Absolutely. Most of the time when I've jumped their shit, it's because their attitude sucked.
Right. Not just because they're not getting the job done or whatever.
You dropped a fly ball.
Yeah.
You dropped that pass. You suck. Like, no. Like, the times that I jump my kids, when I think back on the times that I've kind of jumped them hard and look back on it, I was like, that was probably too much.
Mm-hmm.
It's banging your glove on the ground, taking your hat off, kicking the dirt.
Right.
Your other coach is talking to you, and you turn your back and you walk away. Like, I have no tolerance for that.
Yeah, those are the times you should.
And I'm in his face saying, if you don't wipe that look off your face and you get up here and you cheer on your teammates, I don't care if you've struck out 10 times in a row. The attitude shit ain't going to fly here.
Right.
And if it's not, I'm going to rip your ass and you're going to go in the parking lot and we're out of here. To me, like, I have zero patience for that. Other parents, they don't like that I do that. So sometimes those parents go to some other teams or we move our separate ways. We have our differences, and I'm never going to apologize. I will never berate your kid because a ground ball goes between his legs. Ever.
Right. Well, you know what? I went back to my high school last year during the basketball season, and I was talking to all of the like original coaches are not doing it anymore because they talked about parents and how much
it's hard.
Like how much input they have and complaints they have, and their coaching style is really not allowed anymore. And it's like, I get it. There's probably some things that should evolve. And maybe a couple things from our generation that were a little like questionable for, young children or whatever. But I also am like, we got to remember that part of what we're doing here is discipline and putting others first and all this shit. So it is, are you struggling to kind of, especially in the era of cell phones and videos and all that shit, like, are you struggling to balance both of those things?
Totally. Yeah. And I'm the first to admit it. Like, my competitive, like, what's hard for me to balance in the world of youth sports is what always was my what was always kind of my fuel in my career, whether from high school. My dad was very hard on us. He was that old school high school coach, in your face, very direct, very truthful, very sometimes too much. So like, that's all I ever knew. Right. But like, I embraced that. And that edge and that fight and that competitiveness and that nothing was ever good enough and constantly challenging, like, that fueled me. That was my life. That's all I knew. And it served me very well. Well, now, like, I need to do, like, I've done a lot of like self-reflecting. Okay, like, you got to turn a little bit of that off. Not all of it, because these kids still need to hear the truth, and they still need to learn how to compete, and they still need to learn, how to be a boy and how to be, tough, all that stuff.
Sure.
Even girl, like, I tell my daughter, like, this doesn't just go for the boys. Like, you need to be tough too. But anyway, like, there is a fine line, right? And when they're really young, it's a different approach. And then as they get older, like, my older boy now is in 5th grade. He's playing on competitive teams. The idea is to win. There's cuts, there's tryouts. And I say to him all the time, I said, listen, you lay in bed at night and you tell me you want to do this. I don't care if you play football. I don't care if you play baseball. I don't care if you try out for the drama club. I don't care what you do. But if you tell me you want to do something, and in this case, you tell me you want to play sports, great. I'm going to show you what that means. You might not like it, but if you say you want to play sports, this is how to compete.
Right.
This is, if you don't show up to try out and you don't put the practice in, you're going to get cut. And I'm not calling your coach. I'm not calling your middle school coach and your high school coach one day and bitching that my kid got cut. It wasn't fair. You need to keep more kids. No, that's life.
Right.
So if you don't want to get cut, you better work your ass off.
Right.
And if you don't, I'm going to tell you, because I'd rather me tell you at home and you be upset when you're 10 than when you're 17 and you get cut from your high school baseball team.
Right. Where do you draw the line on, like, I guess quitting in a way? Like, if your kid said, all right, let me try out sports, joins a team, plays for a little while, says they don't like it. I always struggle on, like, I was talking about backyard soccer with my kid, like not even real sports, and he didn't like it, and I was like, is this the time where I say, like, no, we have to go, I'm going to push you through it? We went a couple times in a row where he really didn't enjoy it, but I was pushing him through, and eventually reached the point where I was like, I think this just isn't for him, and I'm just making him do some shit he doesn't like. But, that's always a struggle with me as well, like when you allow them to pull the plug.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, right? And it goes back to our point about being kid-led. I think the best thing that we can do is early on, we cast a wide net. You got to try everything. We have a rule in our house. You have to do something per season. And that doesn't have to be a sport, right? It could be you have to do an after school club at school. A couple of years ago, my son was on the chess team. You have to do something, club activity per season. My one son does a sport a season. My daughter does like a little dance, a little gymnastics, and then does more like soccer in the spring, summer. So like they're very different. My other son has some other, things that hold him back with his heart condition and whatnot. So he can only gravitate towards certain sports. So a little different for each kid. But to answer your question, like, cast a wide net. They're going to find the things that they gravitate to if you give them a lot of opportunities. If they only tried 2 sports, maybe sport number 5 was what they loved. So early on, play everything. We have one rule. You don't have to continue to play it, but you have to finish the season.
So if you start you got to finish it.
You got to finish it. And then if you don't want to go back next year, that's another conversation that we'll have. We got a year to have that conversation. But if you start the season, you're going to finish it. If you don't like it, that's too bad. You're going to finish it. And then after the season's over, we can reassess and try lacrosse, or we could try ballet, or we could try whatever the case may be. I have no problems with that. I tell my kids, it's really, in our house, just because everyone assumes my kids are going to play football and whatnot, like, especially living here where I played, like, there's obviously all those expectations. I tell my boys all the time, like, you never have to play a down of football in your life. I don't need you to play. It doesn't do anything for me. I got my time playing ball. Like, if you want to play basketball, you want to play baseball, you want to play soccer, I don't care.
Is that you being because you want to be a good father like that, or genuinely honestly, you really do not care?
I genuinely do not care. I have just as much fun playing baseball with my kids and basketball with my kids and soccer with my daughter. Now, listen, I love football?
Like, if they wanted to do, you mentioned the drama club. If they wanted to do something non-sports related, you're just as happy.
I have I really have no problems with that. And whether it was my son or my daughter, I really am a firm believer. Like, there's nothing better than watching your kids do something that they love. Now, if they do something they love that you love, that's really that's special,
that's great.
Right? I mean, let's not kid ourselves. But if it's what they love first, you learn to love it. So, like, for example, I was not a big baseball kid. I played locally growing up. I didn't play in high school. My baseball days end when I was in 8th grade, 14U summer travel ball, whatever that was.
Right.
And that was it. Never played another inning of baseball in my life. My 2 boys have gotten into baseball, and my older 10-year-old boy plays like very competitive baseball. He's on a very good team. We travel all throughout the country, and it's real now. It's full competitive cuts, tryouts every year, trying to get the team better. I mean, it's full-blown true sports.
Right.
I've learned to love baseball. I never watched baseball. I never watched Major League Baseball. Me and my sons now will sit up, we'll watch games, we'll talk. Hey, remember that happened? That back pick happened in your game. Like, I've learned to really love baseball because my kids love playing baseball. And it's become now a love that we both have. We go to games. We have a minor league team here in Charlotte. We'll take the kids to.
Sure.
So I guess my point is, like, if they loved football from day, my kids have never played a down of tackle football.
Wow.
They might. My older one definitely will. I don't know if my 9-year-old will or not, but, like, that's okay.
You have any qualms about it physically? Do you have
any
thoughts on, like, when tackling and whatever should be allowed and all that? I know that's kind of a hot button issue going forward.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. It's a real issue, and that's a real issue. The only rule we had, and this was probably a selfish rule of mine, but I'm the dad, so I get to be selfish every once in a while. They weren't allowed. My older son wasn't allowed to play tackle football until I retired. I wanted, and that's not because I needed to control it and coach the team or what. I want to be around during the week and just go see what he's doing.
Right.
If you bring your kid to a soccer practice or a baseball practice or a basketball practice and they get poor coaching, the next year you find a different team, but like, okay, maybe he didn't learn to dribble. Maybe he didn't learn a backdoor cut. Like, that's fine. He's not going to get hurt.
Right.
He's not going to be scarred to death.
Right. Football.
You send your kid to the wrong football practice with the wrong asshole coaching, and not only could they get hurt, but he could lose the love. And that his first experience was just getting his head smashed in every practice because the coach was a dick. I was not going for that.
That's an interesting thought. That is a good point. There's so much more on the line in a sport like that.
So much
You're not
more.
teaching tackling properly. You're being too aggressive. Whatever it is, you're sending home kids in a fucking stretcher. You know, it's soccer. It's 100%. Like, well, whatever. I never thought about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So my daughter, she actually gets coached by a dad who does an amazing job with her soccer team. So it's like amazing. I go there, I fold my chair on Saturday mornings, watch her play, clap, go for ice cream after the game. And the guy who coaches is dad of one of the little girls in her school. He does a great job.
Right.
Like, and it's great for me, but like, I'm not going to go. But if he didn't teach her to use her left foot, or he didn't teach her an offsides, and he didn't teach her next year she could go play for a different coach. Who cares?
Yeah, you can teach her that on your own, whatever. Yeah.
She's going to run around with her friends and play soccer.
Yeah.
If you drop your 9-year-old kid off at a football practice and it's not done right, there's consequences.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that was my one rule. And when I was playing, I wasn't going to be at anything. I wasn't going to be at practice. I wasn't going to be at games. I was going to have no idea what these guys were doing with the kids. And I was not willing to turn my kids over to the world of football until I was confident that I could be around to at least observe, maybe help out, maybe be a part of it, teach them the right way, but at a bare minimum, be there keeping an eye on what was happening. Right. That was my only rule when it came to football.
Well, and that makes the most sense, being able to, you've done both sides of it now, like professional and childhood, obviously. Well, let me ask you this. When you because most of us all have like our favorite childhood memories of youth sports, right? I mean, I'm 37 now. I can still tell you, the exact moments, what was going on in our Little League championship and the good moments and the bad moments. Now, you have professional glory as well, right? What do you think of, like, do you still have Little League, or I guess, Pop Warner moments that like stick in your mind as much as your professional moments?
But you'd be shocked. Like, if I made a list of my top 10 sports moments in my life, 50% of them would be high school or young.
Isn't that funny? Yep.
Like, it's just, there's something so natural and something so organic about just like playing with your buddies. I went to a public high school. So the kids I went to school with since I was in second grade.
Right.
We played Pop Warner together. We played baseball in the summers together. Then we played basketball, and some kids would come and go and played some sports and not the other. But for the most part, like, your core group was your core group for 10 years. Like, there's just something so special about that. And, I can remember walking off the field my senior year, winning the state championship, first one my dad had ever won as the coach, and walking off the field. I have that picture hanging up in my office next to me holding the NFC championship trophy.
Right.
Like, to me, like, they're the same.
Right.
I remember, going with your buddies, like the first time your basketball coach took you on like an away trip, we'd go down to like Philadelphia, say. So 3 hours in the back of a van, your coach would drive it, and you'd go stay in a hotel, and at night you'd run around the hotel, and in the morning you'd play a couple games and you go out to dinner with your buddies. Like,
yes, yeah.
We all remember those days when we were 10, 12. Like, that's the best. Like,
right.
That's when sports is at its finest. And I could close my eyes and put myself back in those moments in a second.
I maintain that like the best period of life is like right before you start like trying to sneak booze and chase chicks and life gets complicated, when it's just like riding bikes, playing whatever sports you love, like, hanging out in a fucking tree house and, swimming in the pool. And that is
like my kid.
The best.
So true.
Right?
It's like my kids now, my twins are in third. So they're still pretty young, but like my fifth grade boy, like, it's too early. There's no girlfriends. There's no drama with girls, and your buddy likes the same. There's none of that. You're not doing anything bad, right? Like, bad is you like didn't bring in your homework, or like, like there's no bad behavior. And like, all they want to do is throw the ball in the backyard, go play with their buddies,
so pure.
go on Fortnite, show me a TikTok video. Dad, let's go hit at the batting cage. I can't believe my team lost. I can't. Like, that's their life.
Yep.
And it's amazing, right? And I tell them, I'm like, boys, like, guys, shit's going to get harder.
So it's going to get so ugly, man. Cherish this now, dude. That's like Billy Madison. I'm like, stay here.
It's so true. It's so true.
And how's the content game going for you? I mean, I feel like you're working with Mikey Fowler now, right? He was a guy over here. And, like, so you're diving into the idea of, it's almost like another career, another sport where it's like you got to build a franchise, if you will. You're building a network and all that. It's no joke, man. It's not as easy as it might seem to some people.
It's not. And, and there is a little bit of a competitive nature to it, right? Where you're competing for viewers, you're competing for eyeballs, you're competing for, where you are in the podcast charts. I remember the first day it came out, and, you'd keep checking back on the iTunes charts and where you are, and you're like, all right, we're at 18. But, like, there's 7 Barstool pods ahead of us. Like, how do we catch
Can we get to top 10? Yeah.
And then you're at like 60, and you're like, shit, what are we doing? Right? Like, so that's exhausting, but also kind of like invigorating, and kind of and exciting. So yeah, I mean, we're growing from start. We feel like this concept can resonate with a lot of people. I mean, this conversation you and I have had is a conversation that's happening all over the country.
Right.
Dad to dad, mom to dad, friends, neighbors. Like, navigating this world for your kids is hard. It's a weird world to grow up in. It's a very different world to grow up in. Every generation says that about the generation to follow. And it's our job as parents, I believe, to understand and realize what you don't know, right? First and foremost, realize what you don't know. And then it's our job to go out and find people who could maybe fill in some of those gaps so that we can apply it and make better decisions for our kids. And sharing these stories, listening to Cooper Manning talk about, throwing passes with Peyton their senior year in high school.
I can't even imagine a family like the Mannings, dude. It's just
it's
so not normal.
Tomorrow.
It's like, and to have another one in the pipeline is like, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, I mean, his episode drops tomorrow, and he, in 1 second he's talking about, he's like, in high school, I'm the wide receiver, I'm the senior, and Peyton's the junior, and my dad wouldn't take us to the camps. We just would go to the high school and play in the backyard, and Peyton would be yelling at us. And he's like, it's the same guy you see now. He was the 17-year-old junior yelling at all the seniors because he didn't like our routes, and he's like, now when my kid needs quarterback help, he's calling his 2 uncles, and they're giving him advice, and he's playing high school basketball, and he's coming off the bench to win a state championship, and they're like a regular family, but they're like operating in a different world, and they're super down the earth. It's just, and then you talk to Sean Johnson, right? We talked to Sean Johnson, and she's like, I'm 8 years old and I'm an elite professional athlete.
I can't even imagine that world. That's crazy to me.
It's, so just so many different perspectives and conversations. It's been really eye-opening. It's caused me to do a lot of like self-check, like, all right, I got to be better, which is great. Like, we're all on this journey of getting better, being better dads, being better parents, being better, kids, whatever it is. And I realize my shortcomings, and part of this journey is kind of a selfish one. I'm trying to look for these answers just as much as everybody else is hoping to get them as well.
Self-awareness, brother. It is the key, man. You got to know what, and I'd imagine switching gears too. It's like, obviously you're the top 0.001% of humans to ever play the game of football, right? And so it's something and know how to do, and then you switch over and you got a lot of life left. It's wild. Yeah. I've always thought it's so crazy in professional sports when it's like, oh my God, take this guy out back. He's done. He's 32. It's like,
just shoot him.
Yeah, and now you got
a racehorse.
Maybe 60 years left on this planet to still do some shit. So I wonder. I don't know if you've had the time or ability to keep up with Barstool, but it's obviously a very different place than when you first. You were on board when, I
was on when you guys just had Boston.
Yeah, early.
It was before Chicago,
right?
Oh yeah, before Chicago, before Philadelphia. It was just you guys in Boston. And
have you caught up with it recently? Like, what do you can be honest if you need to. What do you think about the old days versus the new days?
The one thing I've always appreciated about Barstool, and it's something that I've followed, as we just said, when it was really just like a website, and it was just like a blog, and we'd check in for. You had your smoke shows, and you had your, the coming down those old rundowns, which seems like yesterday, but that was like 7-8 years ago when I was on those rundowns with you guys, the daily rundowns.
It's a long time ago now.
Right? Yeah. Dave is in his basement, right? Dave is in the friggin' basement of his house, wherever the hell he was living. Like, The one thing I've always respected about Barstool is you guys never hid from what you were, right?
Mm-hmm.
You always, the expectations were always clear. People, that didn't mean everyone needed to like it. It didn't mean that everybody's always agreed. Far from it.
Right.
There's not everything you guys have said I've always agreed with necessarily, but the part I always respected was you guys were true to what you were. You were very clear about it. You didn't hide from it, but you were never afraid to evolve, right? Like you guys were never afraid to take a look at the big picture and say like, all right, we need to pivot. We need to adjust, right? Everyone got on you guys for taking the churning money and moving to New York and then the pen money but you guys were always ahead of the curve because you guys were willing to take chances and you guys were always willing to bet on yourselves. And that's the part that I think why you guys resonate with so many millions of people throughout the country is it doesn't mean every person agrees with every word any of you have always said. I think that's ridiculous, the amount of time you guys have been on air talking over the years.
Right.
But I think people can always respect who you're true to what you believe, but you're also true to saying we're not always perfect and we're going to evolve and we're going to change and we're going to change our business model and our personalities. And we're going to go back and look at things we've said in the past in different contexts and say, all right, maybe in today's world, we maybe took that too far. Like I've always respected that about all you guys, whether it was Dave and you and Big Cat and anybody. So that's why I've always been a fan. And I think what you guys do is unique. I think what you guys do is special. It's authentic. And it's not a mystery why millions of people around the country spend almost every day with someone at Barstool in some form or fashion.
And honestly, I think that's exactly what I think you could probably apply directly to what you're doing because it is like the sports landscape, the parenting landscape, school landscape, all going to change throughout the next 5, 10, 20 years. So like, you know, things that you're saying or coaching methods or parenting methods or whatever are going to change and evolve. And like, as long as, you know, you think keeps up with those times while still being true to themselves, you'll probably end up being one of the biggest resources for people, you know, in this world. So, yeah, welcome to the whole fucking content world, man. It's a whole new game.
Oh, man. It is a whole new game. So I appreciate it. You guys have always been awesome to me.
You have You Think, but is there more shows and social media? Like, tell the people where to get everything they need.
Yeah, so Audiorama is the company that we formed with Brian and Vince. You talked about Mikey. He came over and joined us. He's kind of running all of our podcasts, all of our content stuff. He's been awesome. So You Think's our first show. We have a lot of different shows that we're kicking around, stuff that Vince is working on and Ryan's working on.
Was Vince just like a Chicago thing? Is that where that connection was?
So I got to know Vince living in Chicago. We became close friends back then, and we've just always stayed in touch. And then him and Ryan actually live out in California. They're neighbors. So just through Ryan and I playing 10 years together, we're very good friends. We were out just having dinner, just like shooting the shit, having dinner one night. I was like, hey, I'm going to pitch you guys on this idea. We've had a few of the big podcast network kind of reach out to us about developing a show. And this is something I feel pretty strongly about. And I kind of pitched them on this idea that became You Think. And, 12, 14 months later, we're like, let's just do it ourselves, right? Like, let's own it. Let's control it. Let's manage it. We have the resources to piece it together. And let's see if we can build not only a cool show, but let's see if we can build like something bigger and a larger scale. So we decided to take on that whole thing, which has been challenging, but also super fun to kind of start something from scratch. And You Think will be the first show, and we're full steam ahead with that. And we'll have some other cool shows coming down the pipeline probably here in the next few months.
Awesome, brother. Sounds really cool, and it's something that people like myself can definitely use and will appreciate. So thanks for the time, and as always, for the past 20 years of support, having guys like yourself and like athletes and celebrities and all that push us has always been very valuable. So I appreciate that.
You're welcome, man. You guys have always been great to me too. So I appreciate you having me on, and look forward to chatting soon. Hopefully you get something out of You Think. Hopefully it's a resource that you find, and
absolutely.
If it's not, if there's something you're looking for, we encourage all of our listeners and hey, send it to us. If we don't know it, we'll go find it. And that's part of the journey that we're on.
Love it, brother. I'll catch you next time.
Appreciate you, dude.
Have a good one.
Man. Appreciate you.